in brightest day, in blackest night. All other podcasts tremble in fright. Losers cower before the power. Oranges lust and blues you can trust. Indigos feel and white ones heal. Yellow scare and green ones dare. That sapphire love and black hands glove will rock your foundation without hesitation. Chad and Mark face evil's might. Respect their power, for they'll make you see the light. Hi, everybody. I'm Chad Bokelman.
I'm Mark Marble.
And this is the LanternCast.
Episode 516.
Woohoo!
It's a borderline woo. It's half a woo. This is not a Ric Flair level woo, that's for damn sure. Which is not isn't a reflection on the story, but I'm just saying.
All right, everybody. For those of you just joining us, because there's a lot of you, we're the LanternCast. I'm Chad, and that's Mark. We are doing this intro because we're participating again this year in JLMay. And for those of you playing along at home, JLMay is a podcasting event throughout a bunch of different podcasters, comic book podcasters, where we cover something. In the past, it has been things like, when we headed it up, it was Blackest Night. It was Justice at one point with Alex Ross's art. And we've done JLA Year One. We did the Silver Age. And I think one of the years we weren't a part of it, it was Countdown to Infinite Crisis, and stuff like that. But this year, the event is being focused on the 2007-ish series, The Brave and the Bold. And Mark and I are covering issues 19 and 20 of that series tonight. I don't think it's ever been covered on that show before. On the show.
I don't think so.
I don't seem to remember it being on the show. I would have definitely remembered coverage of Phantom Stranger goings on this podcast. But this is a really good series. It's personally, I think it gets, and this is just personally, I think it gets better towards its conclusion when Straczynski takes over and starts writing it. But there's, especially in an era where we don't have a whole lot of good representations of the DC comic book heroes and stuff like that. We get our big Batman books and our Superman books, and some of the other lesser known characters get left behind. This was a really cool opportunity back in the mid 2000s to see the various characters across the DC universe teamed up together. I mean, because of course the series may have started off with like Batman and Green Lantern, or Green Lantern and Supergirl, and so on and so forth. But eventually you would start getting, Power Girl and the Doom Patrol. The Blackhawks would make an appearance. They even had an Ultraman crossover. Dead Man showed up, and then later on you had, Dial H for Hero and shit like that. So this was a really good opportunity for us to see some of these DC characters that we hadn't seen in quite a long time.
Yeah, I have fond memories of this incarnation of the series, and this arc in particular. It is an interesting arc. It's kind of funny, like to me, reading it now, that it kind of reminds me of different things that we've seen related to Green Lantern before and after. So I think it kind of fits perfectly. It's not inherently a Green Lantern story per se, because it doesn't necessarily have to be told with Green Lantern. There's a certain aspect which obviously ties into power batteries and things, but I think it's a good story that fits naturally with the Green Lantern lore, and certainly having Hal be front and center. It was always a positive.
Yeah, 100%. And this, oddly enough, this series was very Green Lantern heavy, relatively speaking, because the first two issues, Batman and Green Lantern, and then Green Lantern and Supergirl. And then we got to issue 6, which had Green Lantern and Batman again. Then we have our 2 issues tonight, and then the next 2 issues following that. And then we later on in issue 30, they had Green Lantern and Dr. Fate. So there was a lot of, relatively speaking, there was quite a lot of Green Lantern in this series. And that may have been by design in terms of Green Lantern being one of the more popular series of the time, because we're right in the Jeff Johns run at this point, right?
This is true. And now that you mention that, I do remember the beginning of the series now in particular with, like you mentioned, the Supergirl thing was something that just kind of like jogged my memory when you said that, because yes, I do remember this. This is how the book started. And yes, it made sense, since this was during the ever so brief part when Hal was kind of like the de facto third member of the Trinity. Seems like eons ago now.
Yeah, once upon a time. Speaking of once upon a time, we have Green Lantern and the Phantom Stranger, number 19 from The Brave and the Bold. This is entitled "In One Voice to Save a Planet." That's the One Voice to Save a Planet is the name of the story here. And it looks like we have David Hine, Doug Braithwaite, and Bill Reinhold to thank for this first issue. We see Green Lantern and Phantom Stranger showing up outside the gates of the Arcadia Hospital and are trying to take on some guards who are shooting at them as they arrive on the scene. So the man behind the hospital is Dr. Bernard Treves. He comes out to greet them, and he welcomes them inside, and essentially Phantom Stranger asks the good doctor to monologue for a little bit and info dump on the situation at hand at Arcadia. Now, one point there was a drug that was developed to help women who were undergoing fertility treatment, so it would help inhibit miscarriages. But it had really bad side effects. And it affected the offspring in ways that they had, I'm reading here from the book, enlarged cranium, atrophied limbs, and no eyes. He takes them to one specific girl who has been impacted by this. Her name is Cora. She has been, mute, silent, no auditory information. She wasn't responsive whatsoever. But 4 months ago, she started writing, and we enter her room where she has been set aside from the others, and it is covered in scattered papers and notebooks in different languages. And Hal uses his ring to translate this, because the doctor says there don't seem to be any recognizable languages. But since his ring is capable of translating any language, it starts to translate the contents of the books from an alien language it recognizes, and it says, "This place is purged of sin, all life is cleansed, the death of the mind, darkness from light." And then he says, the Phantom Stranger asks him to go even further and say, "Okay, now show Green Lantern why I brought him here. Show him what Cora wrote on the wall." And we see behind her on the wall is written the oath of the Green Lantern Corps. And to which Hal reacts, how could she basically know this? They start, he and the Phantom Stranger start musing over the possibilities here, and that it's potentially prophecy, and that the Phantom Stranger recognizes some ilk of magic hereabouts with all of this. And before Green Lantern and Phantom Stranger can take off to take these notebooks that they have acquired from Cora to the Guardians of Oa, the doctor stops the Phantom Stranger and asks him if the dreams will stop, and he says, "I think not," as the two leave to Oa. They speak to the Guardians, who take a look at some of these notebooks and say that they are troubled by them, as well as the presence of the stranger, though they don't elaborate on that part. But they recognize that one of the languages that the ring recognized from the planet of Kalo, they have recently had reports of destruction and no survivors from that area. And Hal will go over and help that sector's Green Lantern for that planet. And Hal asks that the Phantom Stranger come along, to which the Guardians, I guess, reluctantly acquiesce. And then over in Sector 3897, above the planet Kalo, Green Lantern Orlin greets Phantom Stranger and Hal Jordan as they descend on the planet and learn a bit more about the planet and the fact that There's sort of a symbiotic relationship between these people and their the plant-like structures that they have. His wife is quote unquote in the dreaming because there is a plant here that is referred to as the Bellamort, which I think in essence, Mark, would it be fair to say this plant is essentially like the Black Mercy?
It's similar. I mean, it strikes me. It's also odd just in the context that how they kind of go out of their way to make it sound like they don't really consider it to be a parasite because of the fact that maybe even if it's just from a delusional perspective that they see it as more symbiotic because they get the benefits of having these kind of dreams and everything and getting that kind of pleasure but I do think it turns the worst aspect of it or how it can be put to an extreme. Yes, I think it's similar to Mercy in that sense that it can kind of become controlling and all consuming in a way, or more than in a way.
Yeah. So the best synopsis of it that Orlin gives is the Bellamort takes nutrients from its host, and in return it feeds a chemical to the pleasure centers of the brain, and it gives the host dreams. Now, because of this sort of addictive dream state, there are lots of laws and stuff governing the Bellamort, and it's basically not supposed to be used off-world. But of course, there's smugglers and all kinds of stuff that happens. But the city that they're referring to on the planet Chimera, Kymera, is a licensed pleasure city. When people from off-world come to visit it, and they can use the Bellamort and dream about their fights, but they can also, there's combat sports and entertainment, sexual liaisons between species, all fueled by the narcotic effects of the Bellamort. So they start checking into various things. The two Green Lanterns head off on their own while Phantom Stranger does his own checking into things. Hal and Orlin fly over the forest of the Bellamort, which covers almost a tenth of the planet's surface. So this is the origin for all these plants on the planet. The Orlin's ring detects illicit activity and smugglers, so the two go down to face them, but Hal's ring temporarily malfunctions and his power level starts wildly fluctuating. As Hal crashes, Orlin defends him, and it seems all is right with Hal's ring. Hal's a bit concerned about the level of force that Orlin used to defend him when his ring was dark with those smugglers, and he kind of shakes it off. Meanwhile, they go to the city, where all the devastation has been recently caused, and a lot of people are dead. Organic structures have been the organic structures of the city itself have been attacked by a fast-acting virus. Hal opens up one of the pods to see the desiccated husk of a creature. Orlin, the scientists say they've never seen anything like this, and the Phantom Stranger, of course, mysteriously appears to say that it's magic, it's at work, and it's connected to Cora. Meanwhile, Cora is back on Earth in the Arcadia hospital having a seizure of some kind or an episode, and they take her to the emergency room. She's quickly stabilized, but somehow the monitor starts going from her heart rhythms to actually words saying, "Don't let me die, keep me alive. If I die, everyone dies." And the story is to be continued in the next issue. Do we want to stop here and talk about what we've seen so far?
Why don't we push through and do the second issue and then reflect on both?
All right. Sounds good. Again, David Hine is our writer. Doug Braithwaite is our penciler. Bill Reinhold is our anchor. Rob Lay is our letterer. Art Lion colorist. And Braithwaite and Reinhold did our cover. We open on Without Sin Part 2, which is the name of this entire arc, Without Sin, with the Guardians actually poring over the notes from Cora. And she is describing essentially apocalyptic events on other worlds across the universe. And the Guardians acknowledge that all these books tell the same story: a world annihilated by a creature who takes on the form of the dominant species and turns the most powerful forces of each world against itself. And they're musing as to why Cora is the center of all this. We have no way to ascertain any of this as truth, that none of these worlds are within our reach. But Callow is, so they're just sitting and awaiting the response of Hal Jordan. Back on Callow in the city of Chimera, Hal finds another pod amongst the rubble which his ring detects has life readings. So he opens it up, and a Protean is actually survived, and he has lived to tell the tale of a sort of being of light that has shown up, that came out of the sky. He said it's an eater of light. Came out of the sky. It says, I bring you peace. I bring you harmony. I bring you love. And it's sort of a black stuff spreading across the city, this virus that we heard about last issue. But his particular species has a defense mechanism which allows it to sort of excrete some sort of shell around himself, which this ooze, I guess, didn't penetrate. He's taken away by the scientists to be evaluated. Phantom Stranger again sends out his warning that it can't be explained by science, it's beyond nature, that it's magic. And back at Orland's home, both Phantom Stranger and Hal are encouraged to rest for the evening while they take stock of everything and go back to the job at sunrise. Hal goes to sleep, but of course the Phantom Stranger does not need to sleep. And Orland's wife has awakened from her dreaming state, and she tells him about the dreams that she has and how that she guides her sculptures and makes them herself. She forms them, and they change and grow each day, and they're inspired by her dreams. They see Hal take off because I guess he too is having a hard time with sleeping. There's an oddly seductive nature about her here, which I guess we'll talk about later. I don't know why.
So it's the way she's dressed.
Yes, that too. They do a lot with her eyes and her body language here as well. But she says, if sleep is eluding you, maybe you should try the Bellamort. And he basically says, I'm not a physical being. Essentially, I'm not affected in the same way. But he's attacked by a Bellamort, or one reaches out to him, and he does fall asleep and dream. Meanwhile, Hal is exploring the Bellamort forest, and there's a larva that jumps out of him, which he grabs, and his ring scans. It says that it is high density of viral transmitter cells, virus unknown, lethal toxicity. So the whole forest is being poisoned, and it's attacking the life forms out there. Meanwhile, this light eater reappears to this Protean that we spoke to earlier, and despite his protective shell, this time makes quick work of him. He says, your all flesh is corruption, all that is corrupt shall be cleansed. And then meanwhile, back in Arcadia, we just see the words "it hurts" across the screen of the monitor that Cora is connected to. And the doctor calls Mr. Harmon, who I guess is the benefactor behind all of this, and says that she may not have very long and she needs to be treated by an actual hospital. And this man orders I need them gone. I need this taken care of. So his lackey is going to, quote, make a call. So Hal arrives back at Orland's home and has his ring scanned for occupants because no one is responding to him. He reads 2 sentients in the structure, and it's unable to confirm their location or status. He sees Marika in her chair, so he turns the chair around. She has been attacked by the Bellamort, and is dead. And then his ring is starting to die. It's draining power. He goes into a room where he sees light, and it's Orland's lantern. And there's something wrong with it, but it's not anything in particular that he can figure out, because Orland is being possessed by this light eater, and it claims to have adapted the battery to suit his own needs as well as Orland and Orland's will. And he tells Hal to prepare to be purged. And we see Hal covered in this black slime that we saw before as he is screaming.
Not quite the end, but the end for us.
The end for us. But that's okay, because, guys, this is part of a giant podcasting crossover event, and the people who will be covering the next 2 issues in line are our good friends Myron and Phil over at the podcast of Ola. So we can trust the rest of the story to good hands. But Mark and I have indeed read it. We'll try not to spoil it, but obviously we're going to talk about it a little bit. So what do we think of? Well, what do we think of? What do we think of the first 2 issues that we have here?
The setup was really good in the first 2 issues. I actually had forgotten this was a 4-issue arc to start with. I was just reading this, and then it ends at a really nice cliffhanger. So it definitely makes you want to go and read the next issue no matter what, because which is what a good cliffhanger is supposed to do, because it makes you wonder how the hell is Hal going to get out of this, especially because his power is essentially being nullified and or being because Orland's power has really been corrupted, or the battery has been corrupted by the purge, that basically Hal's power on the surface is useless. And I also just like the ties to everything that's going on. And of course, as the story plays out, you understand why Cora is responding the way she is and having such a visceral reaction to everything that basically is going on with the Phantom Stranger and Hal and what they're dealing with. I thought, as a basic premise, I thought this was an interesting story. I kind of did get some Far Sector vibes off this planet.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, obviously at the time we wouldn't have, but now looking back, it's like it's similar with that kind of society, and the dream kind of being not quite the same as having your emotions suppressed, but it strikes a similar beat. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed this. And the story was the beginning was disturbing with the kids and everything else, and the art was, for the most part, I enjoyed the art on this. The Guardians looked especially good.
100%.
Yeah. So I think this was, even just as the first two parts of a 4-story arc, I think this works really, really well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it uses the premise of, Green Lantern very well, because there's obviously something off-world is happening. Something strange is connecting this little girl to some goings-ons out in the cosmos. And magic be damned, it's still connected to space in some way. So there's an alien language here, one of which the Green Lantern ring recognizes. So it only makes sense for how to, report to the Guardians and be like, hey, here's what's going on, and see what the next steps should be. So I do like that it's got a very straightforward aspect to itself. The magic side is not so obvious, honestly. Obviously, like, how Cora is connected and stuff like that, which we learn later in the subsequent 2 issues 21 and 22, they give us some supernatural, some, connected to enlightenment type of stuff goings on out there. So like it becomes, I guess, more prevalent later on, but still the attachment, at least in these first 2 issues, isn't so obvious that it makes sense that the Phantom Stranger is involved yet. Like, obviously, what he knows, how much he knows, and when he reveals that he knows it comes into play later on. Not in our 2 issues, but comes into place. But it would be interesting, being someone who is reading this month to month as the issues come out one by one at the time, and going, oh, Green Lantern Phantom Stranger, and reading issue 19 and then reading issue 20, and coming to the end of issue 20 and go, okay, I'm curious about what's next, but I'm still not understanding why the Phantom Stranger is here.
I think that's valid critiquing of this. It's not true criticism from the perspective that it's not a negative in the story, but it is a question, or they are questions that do not get answered until you get further into the story. So you read it and it's like, plus it's, like you kind of mentioned, like he just, of course, pops up conveniently at the right moment to say something cryptic. And it is in the and then even as you get further into the story, when Cal almost kind of calls him on this and going like, well, you kind of knew this and you knew that all along, didn't you? And it's like, well, but it's kind of like, well, you know how it is. These things have to play out. it's like up yours, buddy.
Which is the Phantom Stranger's lot in life. He does tend to just pop up and be like, cryptic things are afoot. I have need of you. Come with me.
This is very true. So that's part of the reason why it doesn't really bother you so much in this. But it is true that for the first 2 parts, it does seem more science based. A lot of what's going on here, even though you do with the whole, I guess they kind of loop it in and drag you in to believing that it has to do with magic, because you're kind of dealing with prophecy potential and that mystic kind of thing that is obviously not science. So I think that's probably how they get you to realize that, oh, there's more to this puzzle that we don't quite realize yet, and especially since the Phantom Stranger is not exactly functioning when this issue 2 ends, that it doesn't really help further the narrative all that much.
Agreed. All right. Let's see what else about this. I think the art, we talked a bit about the art. The art is interesting. It plays around a bit with I mean, obviously, the further away the perspective of an individual character is, the less detail there is. But there's quite a lot of detail on faces here. And interestingly enough, this is one of probably the few times we see Hal's eyes behind his mask. We don't often see that.
That is true. That's more of an Alex Ross thing.
True, including the fact that we're pairing him up with a Phantom Stranger who we historically don't see with pupils ever, and that is continued here. So I'm curious as to why they chose for Hal to have pupils and the Phantom Stranger to continue to not, which is interesting to me, just as somebody who enjoys the Phantom Stranger.
Yeah, that is true. That would be curious what the stylistic choice, what that decision was based on.
I really like this alien world. It looks really cool. And, you know, not to put too fine a point on it, but alien. I think it's always cool when we see Green Lanterns of another sector and have them sort of info dump their world and how their world and their world's economy and so on and so forth works to kind of catch us up. It can be a bit word heavy and so on and so forth, but it is kind of fun to see these other cultures, which I think is something we miss out on when we have Lanterns go from sector to sector and do what they do, whether they're stopping violence or dealing with some other threat. We never really get to know the world that they're on very well, at least in most cases. So it's nice to see, you know, not only are the Guardians sending Hal and allowing the Phantom Stranger to come, but, you know, clearly they've kind of radioed ahead and let Orlan know that they are coming. So he meets him above planet and all of that. I do even like the whole, like, hey, I'm not quite sure why the Guardians sent you down here because, you know, hey, I'm a Green Lantern too. I got this.
Which is really the first, as the story plays out, it's just kind of like the first sign of maybe something is afoot. But because you can understand a little bit of that general attitude, it's like kind of like almost taking offense to the fact that, hey, it's like I've never given them any reason to think I can't handle my own business, but it also kind of gives you a little bit of that Sinestro vibe. It's like, you don't need to come here because I got everything running smooth. Just trust me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too because when you understand what's going on with him later on in the story, and you go back and page through, you start to see the artistic cues of, you know, like the stoicness of Orlan's face, him giving them the side eye behind them, stuff like that. This is alluded to in our own issues, so it's not like we're spoiling it for the guys over at Podcast of Oa's coverage, but this person is very clearly obsessed with sin. The being referred to as Purge is very obsessed with the idea of sin and cleanliness and stuff like that. So when you go back and start this story again, knowing where this is taking us, you can very clearly see, you know, you would, on first reading, you would probably think of Orlan's attitude of all of this being connected to his status of Green Lantern and everything he has seen, being a Green Lantern, not only for his sector and his planet, but everything he's probably seen throughout the universe. Maybe he just by nature has a different disposition and thought process than the rest of his people based on his own experiences. So maybe it doesn't quite come across as harsh as maybe the word judgment, but let's just, for lack of a better word, his judgment of the use of this plant and the pleasure city or whatever, as he keeps referring to it, makes more sense when you know where things are going. But it's interesting that it also makes sense before you know where it's going.
That's true too.
So I think that's very clever writing. I think too that I don't know where they were going with his wife other than perhaps I don't know, her body language and her looks and everything. Maybe that's just feeding into the idea of the sin and her disagreements between her and her husband about that dreaming state, because he freely admits at the beginning that he doesn't partake in it and doesn't want anything to do with it. So she probably feels pretty judged by him, and things like that. So it's an aspect of the story I'm not uncomfortable with. Is I'm not sure why it was there, because she dies so quickly. I don't know why it's there.
Well, again, I suppose. Well, again, we don't want to get into. It's a slippery slope, because if we talk too much about this, it kind of rolls into
That's true.
The other two issues. But we get an idea as the story plays out. You understand that whether it's a combination of the pseudo parasites or whether it's the influence alone of Purge, that it's able to influence things and make you see, let's just say it makes you see things the way they really aren't. So it's kind of continuing the dreamlike state in a way. So it's debatable how much of it's just because you're under the influence and how much is being actually 100% always manipulated by Purge. But it's also possible, let's just say, how we're seeing what the Phantom Stranger's seeing, but maybe that's not entirely the way things really were going down at the time as far as what the reality of the situation was. But I do think she's supposed to be, if not out and out seductive, she's supposed to be appealing, calming, trying to have him lower his defenses. So obviously what happens to the Phantom Stranger is able to happen, even if he doesn't think it's physically capable of happening to him, that obviously he's being set up because something knows that he is susceptible.
For sure. And it's interesting to see him be affected by this thing, which makes sense later on when you understand the origins of Purge and his abilities and stuff like that. So I guess what of him is being passed through this plant or plant / parasite / whatever, is also attached to the magical. So, but still, as someone who's a fan of the Phantom Stranger being as mysterious as he is powerful, it still irked me a little bit to see him get taken out by it. But I mean, just to know that this is like a very, I don't know, ancient evil, I guess would be the best way to describe Purge, is I guess enough of a cat's paw or whatever, for maybe that's the wrong term, but like just enough of a oh, okay, I guess we can allow that to not be too upset by it.
I think it's enough suspension of disbelief that it works without completely taking you out of the story, or you closing the door going, nope, that would never happen, I'm out.
For sure. I think it's a really good start to a story. It's if you hear me struggling with how to cover this, it's purely because we typically don't cover things without finishing them. So it's hard to walk that tightrope between what we know of the story and then what we're covering on this actual episode. So forgive me for any awkwardness in my attempts to dig into this and try and understand it with just the two issues that we're covering here tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, even when there's stories that sometimes we wish we could just not go back and finish. Usually one way or the other, even if it's a summary, DC versus Vampires, that usually we will go back and at least just because once you start down that road, you feel like you at least owe it to people who do listen to kind of do it. But yeah, it is true. It is something which is kind of funny, because if we do what we are talking about for June, then that would be another one, and then which kind of we won't be, but we could potentially finish. We just won't be starting and finishing in all likelihood. But the reality is that we don't often do just a little piece of a story. But when you think about it, at least for the JLMay thing, it's not really uncommon, because sometimes it's just one event and you just happen to be doing a couple of issues of it. So.
For sure. I really like this. I particularly liked the Guardian beginning of issue 2 with them. Like it's nice that we didn't just see them when Hal brought the books to them, but that we're still seeing them pore over the notebooks and discuss amongst themselves the thought process there. They don't reveal much to us there, but it's still cool to see them nonetheless. And as you mentioned, artistically, they're done very well. One negative aspect I will point out is I would have liked to see more back and forth between the Guardians and Phantom Stranger directly before they headed off to Orland's planet, just with their hatred of all things magic, or their rather dismissal of all things magic, in the best cases, I guess. As well as, I guess, Phantom Stranger's involvement in things, and I don't remember if he was a part. He may have been a part of it at this point. I can't remember his involvement in like the quintessence and stuff like that. The Phantom Stranger is not, as far as we know, I don't believe he's supposed to be unknown to the Guardians. They know who he is, and to see them just be like, we're troubled by the stranger being here, and that's it, is kind of a letdown. I just would have liked to see more back and forth there. I mean, I get it. We got to get into this story, but also we have 4 issues to tell this story. So I would have liked a page or two with them, those two, the Phantom Stranger and the Guardians of the Universe going back and forth for a couple of panels.
I agree with you. I can see why they didn't do it. Just like I can also see why clearly the Phantom Stranger needed to be with Hal, and he needed Hal there. He needed to be there. And as the story plays out, you understand the role they both play. So the Phantom Stranger also was pretty consciously aware that he was just gonna, he did not want to, he wasn't going to do anything to rock the boat that would kind of complicate things either. So I think that's why he kind of was just along, literally seemingly along for the ride as an assist, when obviously we find out later on that more or less he's really steering the ship, and Hal's more along for the ride.
Sure. I do like the Phantom Stranger's involvement. Like I said, I'm a little understanding of the idea of putting myself in the shoes of a reader picking this up issue by issue, and not really understanding the Phantom Stranger's involvement at full until we get to the 3rd and 4th issues. But that said, again, not to cover or just to tread lightly over anything that happens in the next 2 issues. What I do really like about this is the Phantom Stranger's involvement, especially later on, because, the Guardians, of course, one of the stories that we have of the Guardians of their dislike of all things magic, collecting all this random chaos magic in the universe and forming it into this star heart and so on and so forth. They have a distaste for that, but magic still exists in the universe. It's just something the Guardians, and by extension the Green Lantern Corps, typically don't usually deal with, but it's still out there. And when you are policing an entire universe, it's something you are going to come across. So it makes sense that maybe they themselves don't have much understanding of it, or lack any sort of background information that may be helpful in a given situation. But that's why I like stories like we get with Drick, the lantern that's half dead, half alive.
Yes.
What was because there's another lantern who was magical and spoke to the dead and stuff like that. I can't remember his name.
Is that Ash?
It might have been Ash, but there was also another one like during Blackest Night that died.
Sarek, wasn't it? Wasn't
Sarek,
one Sarek,
yes.
And one was Ash?
Yeah, Sarek. I get Sarek and Ash mixed up all the time. So like there's even specifically Green Lanterns who have magic based or magic connected abilities of their own. So I do like when we have cause to use them. Obviously those specific lanterns aren't here, but we're using the idea of team ups and stuff like that to throw the Phantom Stranger here. And it doesn't take away from this being a Green Lantern story, because it still makes sense. It's just an aspect that they don't have personal mastery over, and they gotta essentially call in for a consult. So I do like that, because it goes to our thought process when we're talking like in our State of the Green Lantern Union, how like Green Lantern is a property with which you can tell any story from any genre. You can tell a romance story, you can tell a mystery, you can tell a detective story, which we did see in Far Sector. You can tell all sorts of different stories, including supernatural or horror based stories. And this, while isn't full tilt into that, definitely leans that way enough where you can see the possibilities.
Yes, that is one of the great appeal that Green Lantern has, or when it's done right, is that you can tell almost any kind of story. You can put a Green Lantern in almost any situation, and it can work. It can be interesting. It can be thought provoking. Those are things that, and some you could try to make the case. It's certainly not. It's not the only kind of character or the only body of not just peacekeepers, but not just a corps, and not just literally here because of the Green Lantern Corps, but not just a collective of characters that have similar characteristics and abilities. That you can make that case probably often about something like that, because there's always unique personalities involved when you have different individuals. Even if they have the same power, they're not going to all use it the same way. But the power itself, because of how the willpower and how it originates from and how it's manifested, that I think that does open the door for many different types of stories that certain other characters probably would not have the same carte blanche to tell or have stories told with.
Agreed. I do have problems with the art here and there. It's not necessarily and it's not necessarily anything to do with the actual talent or anything, or any particular technical aspect of it. It's just the style preference for me. That said, it's not wholly a style I completely reject. So I'm actually happy to have reread this. Obviously, we covered these 2 issues, but I reread all 4, as did you. And I'm glad I did, because I didn't forget about this, but it kind of slipped in my mind. And I do wish we kind of had like a small 4-issue trade of this to put on the shelves. I think it's a decent Green Lantern story, and it's definitely worth adding to the collection.
I would say
give it like a 7 or 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's definitely kind of, if it's at least like in the B plus tier range of stories, especially when you get all 4 parts, and then when you get the next part where Green Arrow starts coming into it too. That even though it's kind of funny because Green Arrow and Hal don't have much of interaction really, but still conceptually it's nice that those 2 characters are in an arc together and eventually come together, but it's not like they're not in the trenches a lot together in this story much.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for our coverage of JLMay for issues 19 and 20 of Brave and the Bold. I do want to talk a bit about some of the other podcasts that are out there. I'm not going to go over who's covering what, but in relative loose order, we have quite a few podcasts participating this year, and I do want to at least point you to them by name. We have the Overlooked Dark Knight, Dial F for Flanger, the Bat Pod, Legion Podcast, the Legion Project, Teal Productions, Right On Network, Justice Trek, Pop Culture Affidavit, It All Comes Back to Superman, Longbox Crusade, Resurrections, and Adam Warlock and Thanos podcast, Married with Comics, Superman in Crisis, us over here at the LanternCast, and follow our episode over to our friends Myron and Phil over at the podcast of OA. Well, they'll be covering the next 2 issues. We also have JLI's Bwahaha podcast, Rolled Spine, Weird Warriors, Magazines and Monsters, Once Upon a Geek, Head Speaks, Coffee and Comics, Aquaman and Firestorm, the Fire and Water podcast, Waiting for Doom, and Fanholes podcast. I believe actually Once Upon a Geek will be covering the issue 30, which is the Green Lantern Dr. Fate one, which I love that issue. I've had that for a long time. Again, that just kind of comes back to my love of the back quarter of this run, which is when Straczynski joins with issue 27 and a Batman and Dial H for Hero story, and then finishes out the series. But I don't know. This run is particularly popular because of one specific issue in the back half or the back quarter, which is issue 33, which came out in June 2010, which is probably the biggest issue of that year, which was number 33, Wonder Woman, Zatanna, and Batgirl. And it's called Girls Night Out. Do you remember that one?
I can't honestly say that I do. It sounds somewhat familiar, but I don't know if I had that issue.
Yeah, it's you know what? I really don't want to spoil because whoever is getting to cover that is damn lucky. I don't want to spoil their coverage of that, but I highly encourage people go listen to that coverage, because if you have never read Brave and the Bold 33, Girls Night Out, you are missing out on probably one of the best comic stories written of that particular decade, which is a bold claim, but neither here nor there. But Straczynski's back quarter of it, there was a Batman and Brother Power the Geek story, which was fucking crazy. I really enjoyed an Atom and Joker story where the Atom had to save the Joker through his own use of his abilities and stuff like that, which was, had a moral tint to it and all of that. I don't know. It's just, I finally remember it because I don't have all of these issues. Obviously, I have the Green Lantern, Dr. Fate one, and the ones we covered tonight, and our friends are going to be covering over on the podcast of Oa. But boy, did I make a point to get the hardcover of Straczynski's Brave and the Bold team ups, because I don't have any of these other issues in trade form, but I have Straczynski's run in trade form, and it's well worth reading for sure. So I've definitely been enjoying the coverage so far on some of those other podcasts. Like I said, guys, or playing along at home, I just listed off a massive list of podcasts. The list gets bigger every time we do JLMay. So trying to coordinate and schedule a specific release schedule for all those podcasts in 1 month is a bit of a daunting task. So some of the coverage, even after our own issues, is maybe even already out as you've heard this, but just go on to your various social media platforms and look up the hashtag JLMay 2023, and you will find all of them there. I will also make sure to copy and paste the links to these podcasts over to Mark so we can include them in our post for this episode. And I can't wait to hear what the rest of these shows have to put out for us.
Nicely said, Chad. Nicely said.
All right. Well, before we go, we just wanted to take an opportunity to let people know what's been going on, at least recently, with our show, in case you have circled back since the last time you've participated or listened to a JLMay event. Of recent, we actually had an interview with Philip Kennedy Johnson.
Well, one of us did, but yes, as a collective, I was there as spirits. Stupid work problems, but yes, that was, you done good, Chad.
Well, I mean, that's just one of them. We started a new series that we'll be continuing on in kind of like a top 5 list sort of style. We're talking about some of the best covers from Green Lantern past, from various eras, which we'll be continuing on in the future.
I think that's a winner. I'm sure Jim won't let us forget that either. But I think that one is, besides the fact that we can get a lot of mileage on that one, just in general, it's the fact that it's fun, and sometimes those things don't always go hand in hand. but that's a fun topic to pick different eras and try to come up with our favorite covers and what appeals to us, because obviously different people have different tastes.
Yeah, 100%. And even at the beginning of this year, you actually had a great episode with Corwin and Dan going over the retrospective of Parallax.
God, that seems like eons ago. I do love that episode. Again, not because I was on it, but that it worked. It was an episode that could have gone off the rails just from an organizational perspective, but luckily we started rolling pretty quickly. And yes, it was something we had wanted to do for a while, just because it was the history of Parallax from the very big, from what we saw and thought of Parallax back during the Kyle Rayner era to obviously how that changed during the Jeff Johns era. And Lord knows we haven't seen much in general post the Johns era, truly, of even of the entity. But the reality is it was a relatively comprehensive. Again, there were some arcs and some stories that we didn't get a chance to discuss, but I am particularly proud of that episode.
And everybody playing along at home, you've actually listened to us at a great time, because as we record this week, a brand new Green Lantern #1 is out. At the beginning of a new series, we have Jeremy Adams writing with Zermancio on the artwork, and then Philip Kennedy Johnson and Montos doing the John Stewart backup in that. Issue 1 just hit. We will be covering that very soon in all subsequent issues, as I'm sure you're anticipating of us. And a little sneak preview. I loved it. And I can't wait for the rest of this series.
Yes, hopefully it will be a precursor of things to come. We'll get into it more. That should probably, knock on wood, and we've always cursed when we do this. That should be the next episode that we do, our thoughts on that. But it definitely was a good way to start the series. it feels like a Hal Jordan Green Lantern book, and it gives you enough questions and opens the door for explanations for certain things, and it works. It was a good way to lay the groundwork for a new ongoing. So that's optimistic. Thumbs up.
And don't forget, they announced the other day that there's going to be some Golden Age characters who are getting miniseries of their own, including Alan Scott. So Green Lantern is really, truly on the come up right now. No bullshit. And a lot of these first new outings are just now hitting us. So I'm really excited for the opportunity to dive into some new Green Lantern stories, because it's been a year without a Green Lantern series proper.
Yeah, I think that's about right. It's pretty much close to a year, if not if we haven't hit the year mark since the John Stewart book got put on. The John Stewart book pretty much got put on pause because of Dark Crisis. Good choice, people. But now we have this. We have the John Stewart backup story, soon to be the John Stewart mini, and then of course I'm still cautious about the Alan Scott mini just based on the way it was written, but the write-up, the synopsis. But we'll keep our fingers crossed and we'll see how that plays out.
For sure. And if people want to stay in touch with us as we start through all of that coverage, how do they reach out to us?
And let's hope this goes better than last week.
Hashtag Facebush.
Ah, yes, that will never die.
Someone get that domain and hold on to it.
That's right. Everyone sign up for your Facebook page right now. We'll send you a link. No razor required. LanternCast.com. The email is LanternCast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. #GeoCast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. So please leave us a review on all platforms you listen to us on. Our YouTube channel is LanternCast Vids. We have some unboxings and card unboxings. We have some Big Bad Toy Store unboxings, among other things, some product action figure reviews, things of that nature. Last but not least, if you'd like to leave us a voicemail or a text, 708 Lantern, and let us know what you think.
All right, guys. Phantom Stranger willing, it'll be Green Lantern #1 next week. We'll talk to you then.
Viva la Face Bush. Good night, people.
Good night.